For 12 long years, one of Hollywood's most famous ex-wives chose silence, carefully holding her tongue while the world speculated. She said nothing, not because she had nothing to say, but because silence served a purpose. Then April 18th arrived. On the very day her daughter, Suri, turned 18 and blew out her birthday candles, that quiet restraint ended. In that moment, silence stopped being a choice and became a powerful statement, one she was finally ready to use. For years, the public only saw the pretty pictures: Katie Holmes smiling on New York streets, glowing on magazine covers, looking calm and untouched by drama. But what the cameras never showed was a far darker truth hiding behind those images. According to people inside the industry, Katie wasn't just choosing a quiet life, she was locked into something far more frightening. Lawyers later described it as a nearly unbreakable legal deal, a carefully built cage created by Tom Cruise's team to keep certain secrets sealed forever. The rule was harsh and clear: stay silent about Scientology or risk losing your child. That threat worked for one reason only: custody. Tom's legal power rested entirely on child custody laws, but every clock runs out eventually. Today, Suri is legally an adult. The $400,000 yearly child support checks have ended, the leverage is gone, and the shield that once protected the Top Gun star is starting to crack. At 45, Katie Holmes has outlasted the trap. The waiting is over. The countdown has hit 0, and for the first time since 2012, she stands with nothing left to fear. To understand just how tight the control became, you have to go back to the beginning, because this story didn't start with love. It wasn't destiny. It wasn't a random meeting at a Hollywood party. Investigative reports claim it began with something far colder: a casting call. Before Katie ever stepped into the picture, the role of Tom Cruise's wife had allegedly been offered to several young actresses. Insiders say many were quietly screened and quickly walked away. They sensed it wasn't romance being offered, but an arrangement. Katie, however, stood apart. She was young, she was trusting, and she had grown up idolizing the movie star. Once she was chosen, everything moved fast, disturbingly fast. Within weeks, the cheerful girl next door from Ohio disappeared. In her place emerged a controlled, polished figure who followed strict instructions. Her casual clothes, jeans, sneakers, comfort were erased. They were replaced with luxury gowns, towering heels, and a carefully crafted image she wore everywhere, even on simple grocery runs. The transformation wasn't natural, it was designed, and it was only the beginning. What people noticed on the outside was the new clothes. What they didn't see was the control tightening behind closed doors. Almost overnight, Katie was never by herself anymore. A new best friend suddenly appeared, chosen for her, not by her. This person followed her everywhere, always nearby, always watching. During interviews, they stood just outside the camera frame. When reporters asked questions, Katie often glanced at her handler before answering. At times, the handler didn't wait. She spoke for Katie instead. It was a familiar tactic: flood her with attention, private planes, endless praise, a life wrapped in luxury. But while it looked like love, it slowly cut her off. Old friends faded away, family grew distant. This wasn't just romance unfolding, it was conditioning in progress. Then came April 2006. Only days before the baby was born, a truck arrived at the Beverly Hills home. It wasn't carrying balloons or congratulations. Instead, it unloaded large official signs with one chilling message: remain silent, move slowly, be fully controlled. This marked the start of what was called a silent birth. The delivery room was turned into a no-sound zone. Doctors were forbidden from saying the word push. Nurses weren't allowed to offer soft encouragement. If something went wrong, the medical staff had to communicate with hand signals only. The belief behind it was disturbing. They claimed that words spoken during pain could imprint trauma on a newborn's mind. Katie was allowed to scream if she had to. Everyone else, however, had to stay completely silent, cold, still, and expressionless. And when the baby was finally born, the quiet didn't fade away. That silence followed her long after the delivery room doors closed. After the baby arrived, everything went quiet, too quiet. Reports say the mother and child were kept away from the outside world, locked into silence. Some insiders even claimed that the parents were told not to talk to the newborn for an entire week. From that moment on, the grip on Katie's life tightened fast. She was no longer left on her own. Wherever she went, someone followed. A woman named Jessica Feshbach suddenly appeared in her life, introduced as a close companion. She was a powerful figure inside the organization, and she was described as Katie's new best friend. But that title hid the truth. Jessica wasn't a friend, she was a handler. Journalists began to notice something unsettling. When Katie was asked a question, she wouldn't answer right away. Instead, her eyes would drift towards Jessica. Many times, Jessica spoke for Katie. In one well-known interview with W Magazine, the reporter later said Jessica behaved like a living wall, standing guard and controlling every word that came out of her mouth. Slowly, Katie's past disappeared. The manager who had guided her career was gone. Her longtime agent was dismissed. Friends she had before the marriage faded away one by one. Inside the compound, every face around her had been carefully selected. Nothing was accidental. Privacy no longer existed. Calls were listened to, emails were reviewed, every move was tracked. On the outside, she looked like the most admired woman on the planet, but behind closed doors, her world felt like a cage dressed up as luxury. And then it hit her, the feeling that she wasn't just being filmed, she was being watched. Still, it wasn't the cameras that finally broke her. The real fear was tied to one date she couldn't stop thinking about. A single moment that changed everything. Suri had just turned 6 years old. To most people, being 6 means crayons, school bells, and the playground, but in Tom's world, 6 carried a far heavier meaning. It was seen as an age to be claimed. Katie learned, according to reports, that Tom was preparing to send their daughter away to a place known as the Sea Org. This was not a fun camp or a short visit. It was described as the church's toughest inner circle, run like a military unit. Members wear naval-style uniforms and are expected to work non-stop, day and night. What made it even more disturbing was the commitment required. Joining wasn't temporary. You didn't sign up for a few years. You signed a contract for 1 billion years. Under their belief system, that meant pledging your soul not just for this lifetime, but for every lifetime to come. Katie was said to be frozen with fear. She believed her daughter, Suri, could be sent to a ship called the Sea Winds. In her mind, that meant losing her child to strict training, deep indoctrination, and total separation from family. Her little girl wouldn't just grow up there, she would be molded into a loyal soldier for the church. Katie didn't need to imagine the outcome. She had already seen it play out. Tom had 2 older children, Isabella and Connor, whom he adopted during his marriage to Nicole Kidman. After Tom and Nicole divorced, the children stayed with him and were raised inside the church. What happened next became Katie's worst fear. Isabella and Connor stopped calling Nicole their mother. Eventually, they stopped speaking to her at all. Within the church, Nicole had been labeled a suppressive person, or SP. This title is given to anyone who questions or criticizes the group. Once someone is marked as an SP, the rules leave no room for emotion. Contact must be cut off completely. No calls, no visits, no relationship. For Katie, this wasn't just a rule on paper. It was a warning of what could happen to her own child if she didn't act in time. Katie saw it happen with her own eyes. Isabella and Connor treated their mother like she didn't exist. That moment hit hard. She understood the truth right then. If she didn't act fast, Suri's future would look exactly the same. One day, her daughter would be taught to turn against her. She would be trained to believe her own mother was the enemy. Time was running out. If Suri signed that contract or if the conditioning went any further, Katie knew she could lose her child forever. Asking for a simple divorce was never an option. Tom would never allow Suri to leave, so Katie needed something smarter, something quiet, something so fast and unexpected that even Tom Cruise wouldn't notice until it was already done. The escape began with something small and forgettable, a cheap piece of plastic. In June 2012, Katie Holmes didn't just reach out for legal help. She set a secret plan in motion, one that felt more like a spy mission than a breakup. She knew her usual phone was being watched. One wrong call and the whole plan would collapse. So she switched tactics. Her hidden tool was a burner phone. A friend bought it with cash, no name attached. That simple device became her private line to freedom. Still, Katie knew that wasn't enough. She wasn't just facing a powerful actor, she was up against an entire system that never liked losing control. One mistake could ruin everything. So she didn't trust just one lawyer. Quietly, she hired 3 different law firms across 3 different states. By dividing her legal team, she kept Tom's side completely in the dark. There was no clear trail to follow. While Katie planned her next move from a secret apartment in New York, Tom was far away in Iceland, busy filming his sci-fi movie Oblivion. The timing couldn't have been better. He believed everything at home was calm. Later, he would admit the truth. He never saw it coming. The moment hit him without warning. And then, Katie made her boldest move yet. Tom probably thought the fight would happen in California where they lived, and that made sense. In California, courts usually split custody between both parents. That kind of deal would still give Tom influence. It would mean he could push their daughter, Suri, into Scientology schools, and that world would stay close. Katie saw that risk clearly, and she refused to accept it. So she waited. The moment she stepped into New York, she made her move. New York law plays by different rules. There, judges are more open to giving one parent full custody. Filing in that state changed everything. With one decision, Katie boxed Tom into a corner he never saw coming. This wasn't just about ending a marriage, it was about owning her daughter's future. And the timing was perfect. While Tom was locked on a movie set, cameras rolling, Katie struck. No warning, no delay. The action star who always wins on screen suddenly had no control off it. For the first time, Katie wasn't reacting, she was leading. Most Hollywood divorces turn into endless battles. They drag on for years, burn millions of dollars, and leave everyone damaged. Just look at Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. 7 years later, they're still fighting. But Katie Holmes did what almost no one else could. She closed her divorce from Tom Cruise in just 11 days. Let that sink in. 11 days to walk away from one of the most powerful men in the world. That speed wasn't luck, it wasn't magic, it was a deal. Katie paid for her freedom with one thing Tom couldn't take from her: her silence. Whispers later surfaced about a hidden clause in the divorce deal, and it felt more like a cage than a settlement. The rules were harsh. Katie was reportedly warned to never shame Tom and never speak about Scientology. But the most shocking rule came last. She wasn't allowed to date anyone in public for 5 long years. At first, it sounded unreal. Then the timeline started to make sense. Not long after the split, Katie was linked to actor Jamie Foxx, yet they moved like shadows. They denied the rumors, slipped into cars, wore disguises, and exited events one by one. For years, no photos, no confirmation, just silence. The reason was simple: the clock was running. Then, in 2017, exactly 5 years after the divorce papers were signed, everything changed. The two were finally seen holding hands on a beach. The wait was over. The rule expired. Her sentence was done. But the biggest sacrifice wasn't about love, it was about money. Katie had a prenup, but she could have pushed for half of Tom's massive fortune, around $250 million. She chose not to. She walked away without spousal support and accepted only $400,000 a year in child support. To most people, that sounds huge. To a man worth nearly $1 billion, it was spare change. And Katie knew that. Money was never the goal. What she wanted was control over her child's life. By accepting less, she secured primary custody of Suri. That choice protected her daughter from being sent to a strict Scientology boarding school. She paid the price in silence, privacy, and lost opportunities, but in return, she gained something priceless: her daughter's freedom and future. And even then, this chapter was far from the end. Now that Suri has turned 18, the walls Katie built are finally being tested, but not in the way anyone predicted. Today, Katie is 45, and after more than a decade, the countdown everyone talked about has officially ended. For years, people were convinced this moment would explode. The assumption was simple: the instant Suri became an adult, the silence would shatter. Many expected Katie to sign a massive book deal, step into the spotlight, and expose everything she'd been holding back. But that moment never came. Katie didn't speak, she didn't explain, she didn't accuse. Instead, she chose something far more powerful: proof. The answer wasn't in interviews or headlines, it was visible in Suri's life. She isn't part of Scientology, she isn't being prepared for Sea Org. She's just a regular college student at Carnegie Mellon, building a future on her own terms. She even let go of her father's famous last name, choosing to introduce herself simply as Suri Noel. Tom Cruise still keeps his promise financially, paying the $65,000 tuition, but beyond the checks, he's absent. He hasn't been seen with his daughter in years. His presence in her life has faded into little more than a transaction. Katie's silence was never surrender, it was strategy. She understood that speaking out would only pull Suri back into a storm she worked so hard to escape. By staying quiet, she created a shield that couldn't be challenged, argued with, or taken away. And when you strip everything down, the outcome becomes clear. Tom Cruise kept his secrets, but lost his family. Katie Holmes gave up her voice for a time, but protected her child. She didn't need to fight the system head-on to win. She only needed to outlast it. And when you look at Suri today, free, grounded, and living her own life, the inclusion is impossible to ignore. Katie won.